Sedona, Arizona, famous for its red rock formations, energy vortexes, and the international headquarters of Dr. Masters' religious and educational organizations. We have a special program related to questions and answers for Dr. Masters, who is the founder and president of the International Metaphysical Ministry, University of Metaphysics, and the University of Sedona. Dr. Masters, would you define metaphysics as applied and instructed by the International Metaphysical Ministry?
Metaphysics has many, many different definitions nowadays, and our particular definition is to keep metaphysics God-centered. In other words, the focus is not so much into the paranormal and into the psychic areas as has become customary in recent years, but instead to keep focused on the inner source within oneself. If we keep that, then all of the roads that other people are traveling in the various aspects of metaphysics end up leading and coming into that one area of focus. Our intention is stick with that focus as one goes along. There's an old Hindu expression which goes, even a mind that knows the path, meaning the path to enlightenment, the path to God, can stray from the path because the senses, our outer sense perceptions, dissuading us from what we are so unruly. But the seer recollects his mind and fixes it on me. I call him a seer, I call him a lumen. And that's from the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu equivalent of the New Testament in Christianity. And that is where our focus is, to remain with the idea of connecting with all of life, the universe, and the universe to us is God. That's the central core of our teaching.
Describe the latest literary works written by you that teach metaphysics.
The latest thing, again, is God-centered. I call it a theocentric life ministry, theocentric psychology. It is taking the aspects of the known and the unknown in a philosophical and psychological sense and merging them into a synthesis that is adaptable to people in everyday living. Now, the idea of something dealing with theocentric would sound very, very theological to a lot of people, but I've tried to take in the latest things that I've written and bring it home so that they can apply it from the time that they get up in the morning to the time that they go to sleep at night. That is where I feel something can be added to the field. Otherwise, if we do as many theologians do and just talk amongst ourselves and go over the heads of the ordinary people, what is the point of any of this if it can't be adapted to improving a person's life on a day-to-day basis?
Now, Dr. Masters, tell us a little bit about the website for the International Metaphysical Ministry.
The website we have taken a great deal of time to create. It covers just about everything a person could ask about the organization, about either of the universities, i.e. the University of Metaphysics or the University of Sedona. It shows many of our graduates. It has, as part of it, graduation ceremonies, convention shots, live performances, entertainment. It is a beautiful mix of many, many different aspects that if a person went to our website, they could literally sit there for hours and either be informed and or entertained.
Now, I understand that somebody could also enroll using the website and participate in some of the degree programs that you offer.
Yes, it's made very, very simple. We have had the website presence for many, many years. The university, the schools have spent a great deal of money to make it as easy and as comfortable for people to navigate through the site as possible. And if anybody has an interest in enrolling and so forth, certainly it can be done through the site.
Is there any comparison with your teachings and secular humanism?
There is, and even though religious denominations of various sorts would say, no, we have nothing to do with secular humanism because it goes against the teachings of being against God, which is the secular humanist is opposed to the idea of any type of deity or supreme being or intelligence. There is a similarity in the sense that the secular humanist believes that in a better life that people have it innately within them to improve their life, to be better people. Now, that doesn't contradict anything in any area of religion. However, the main thing is that there is not the presence of God in their particular approach. They are truly anti-deity and anti-God. In that sense, there would be certainly the most fundamental clash between what we teach and secular humanism. We can appreciate some of the things in secular humanism which parallel what every major denomination says, that there is an inherent goodness within the human being. Now, the only thing is that the secular humanists will say, well, that's just a product of evolution. It's a product of all of the cells and the energies having come together, and somehow or other man is inherently good. While in our approach, and the approach of most major religions, the idea is that that goodness is innately within us because God is innately within us. That's the main difference.
Is there any comparison to your teachings with Christianity?
That is a question that we often encounter, as if what we teach is something apart from Christianity. The idea is really what we teach is that there were two messages from Jesus. One was for the masses, and the other was for his disciples. We teach basically what was for the disciples. What was for the disciples was more of the mystical, i.e., the coming together, the oneness of the human soul with the Spirit or God. To the masses, the majority of people, even today, are not that interested in taking time to go into what Jesus taught the disciples. They don't want that depth. They're too busy enjoying their lives or suffering through that, as the case might be. So therefore, we are not in an opposition. The thing is, we respect what is taught to the masses, and at the same time, what we teach is for those people that perhaps have outgrown that particular message and want the inner teachings of Christ. In that sense, we actually are more Christian than those that claim to be Christian.
Dr. Masters, does the church organization accept criticism as to its beliefs and practices?
We would be far apart from anything that deals with religion if there was not criticism. Nobody is going to agree when it comes to religion, or spiritual matters of any kind. Therefore, of course we accept criticism. That doesn't mean, when I use the word acceptance, that we're going to just simply lay back and say, hey, you're absolutely right. Absolutely not. The difference with us is this. The first few decades in this work, I spent time with literally thousands of people, taking them into higher states of consciousness, having them write out their experiences, matching those experiences one person to another. In a sense, we crossed the empirical line, i.e., we explored the unconscious. Our writings right now that we put out, in a practical sense, are based upon what we found as a result of exploring the unconscious. And we were very, very definite in doing that. What effect did these experiences have, these otherworldly experiences of entering the so-called kingdom of heaven within oneself? What effect did they have in their everyday life, in their marriages, in their work, in their employment? And along with this, let's say spiritual healing. Spiritual healing we explored. In other words, if a person claimed to have spiritual healing, we followed through. We weren't like these evangelists or other so-called spiritual healers that just simply cut and you think the person is healed. We followed up with how they were 3 months from then, 6 months from then? Was it psychosomatic? Was it suggestive therapeutics? And so the things that we have in our teachings, they can be criticized, but there is no other religious organization that I know of that has gone to the depths of trying to find out what is real and not real. And that is why, if there's criticism, sure, we'll listen to the criticism, but be very, very careful when you criticize, because we have spent decades in doing things that no other religious, either small or up to the Vatican, has done publicly.
Is it reasonable to say the university is worldwide in its scope and reach?
The university has grown over the decades to where we're now in 120 countries, students and graduates. We're certainly in every state in the United States. Therefore, I would say that on an international scale, we are pretty well covered. Now, that's not to say that the basic message is the same with every place and every country that we're in, because certain countries have peculiarities in terms of their own religious beliefs, where some of them are very theistic in certain areas. It would be difficult in certain countries to be able to teach and espouse because they do not have the freedom of religion, unfortunately, that we have here in the United States. But on an international scale, 120 countries is an awfully broad expanse for the schools to cover, yes.
Can you explain to us what a graduate can do in use of their degrees from the organization?
The degrees really are to say that the person has learned our particular teachings of the particular ministry that we espouse. The areas that the person can go into, first of all, traditional ministry, i.e. they can be at the pulpit on a Sunday morning or whatever day of the week it might be, or a lot of them choose to open up teaching centers where they teach and espouse various concepts, not only of our basic teaching, but also they have the freedom to voice other areas that they have a specialized interest in. Some might give seminars, as an example, on dreams or other self-help subjects. That is very, very popular.
I want to show what happens when people complete their courses, that it opens up a wide new vista for them. On the back, this is Sherry's bio. The title of the book, incidentally, is Healing Heartaches, which is an awfully good title. Sherry Showalter, PhD. Where from? From here. A National Heart of Hospice recipient for psychosocial spiritual caregiving, has long been an advocate for patients and families coping with loss, dying, and bereavement. She proudly served with other first responders at the Pentagon during the 9/11 and continues to work with those coping with sudden and traumatic losses. She is an author, speaker, and psychotherapist living in Florida, enjoying magnificent sunsets on the Gulf of Mexico. Sherry often says, I am continually amazed at the resiliency of the human spirit. Indeed, every day is a gift. For those that are family and friends that are attending, graduating gives that extra boost. So, and I'm sure that there are others here in this audience that have already written books. By being a graduate, it gives further acceptance by the public at large.
Counseling, pastoral counseling is a very, very large part of it. And then in more recent years, there's been an enormous popularity as far as coaching is concerned. The idea of, as many psychologists have gone into coaching as a branch of their practice, so many of our metaphysical counselors have also branched out into coaching. And coaching, as it's become more accepted, that is executive coaching on one hand, personal evolvement coaching, centering in, as the basic teaching does, on the potential of what is in the individual. That is really the thrust, actually, of our teaching, to bring forth the God-given potential. And I don't think that anybody is more adept at doing this than somebody that has gone through our teaching, which deals with God being within oneself. And so whatever a person brings forth as their potentials in this lifetime equates to their soul's purpose in this lifetime, and the ability to be able to fulfill that soul's purpose. It is as if the God center within them is bringing forth the attributes of God: creativity, will, concentration, to see things through to their fruition.
How important is science with the scientific method in understanding the organization's teachings?
As I said a few minutes ago, when we explored the unconscious, that to me was our attempt at being scientific, i.e., registering the experiences of what came forth as a result of exploring a person's unconscious. If we found, as an example, that there were a number of people that were having the same experience, then we could say that there was something that was universal in the unconscious of the people that we were experimenting with. And as a result of that, we could say that this equates to empirical evidence as scientific procedure would want it to be. It was an interesting thing that Carl Jung, who was probably, to me at least, the greatest psychologist of the last century, once said about these experiences that a person would have coming from their unconscious mind, that whatever a person experiences to that individual that has come from within them in these expanded states of consciousness is a psychic fact to that person. Now, if you begin to take a lot of these facts that are coming up from the unconscious of many people, then we have something that is repeating. The idea of something that repeats and repeats and repeats over a series of many, many people, even though it's a product of the unconscious, has then merit scientifically, even though you can't outwardly touch it or feel it in terms of outside empirical evidence. But after all, what empirical evidence is today is going to be the superstition of tomorrow. The same could be said of what we are coming forth with. However, what we're coming forth with has stood the test of time in terms of inspiring people to greater heights in terms of spirituality. That is one thing that science, as it becomes superstition in the future, the science of today, cannot begin to say that it has carried that inspirational level to continue to give people hope and to bring them forth to say, I can do better tomorrow.
Do intellectual disciplines of astrophysics, astronomy, cosmology place in the teachings or understanding of the organization?
Absolutely they do. Because what we find out is this: it's a very, very interesting thing that's been happening, especially in more recent years, that the more that science learns, the more it tends to parallel what mystics down through the ages have been teaching, more of things that are more universal. It is almost as if, to a mystic, as an example, going into oneself is actually going out into infinity, because in the unconscious is all of that which has come before the human being is as it is now. That is, in our unconscious, think of it as like a tape recorder. You put it, you can go into fast forward and think you're going into the future, or you can go fast backward. And so when you go fast backward, you go into, and you begin to, in higher states of awareness and consciousness, begin to see into the universe itself, into the origins, the idea that it parallels the idea in the beginning was light, and God said, let there be light, or there was darkness, and God said, let there be light, and from light all things came forth. Now, this is maybe to a lot of people a stretch to say, well, the Big Bang happened when God said, "Let there be light," and from light all things came forth. But if there was darkness and nothing taking place before that particular time, it parallels. What I'm saying here is the more that science uncovers, the more it parallels what mystics down through the ages have said, and this is the main thrust of what our teachings are, to bring them into modern focus. So that to me, as science goes up this mountain, mysticism is also right in a parallel, and the two shall eventually meet. What mystics have found in their unconscious mind to say the creation of the universe, eventually science will arrive at the same point, and the two, science and spirituality, to me then will be a natural merger of arriving at the ultimate truth.
Does the realm of paranormal have a respectable place in the organization's teaching?
We take the paranormal into consideration. We take whatever the paranormal is saying that they have found under consideration, but we do not become obsessed with the paranormal. You see, that's the problem in metaphysics. If you focus in too much on one aspect of any area of the paranormal, you miss then the total picture. You're focusing in on one small part of the total picture. Most of the people that get an interest in the paranormal, that's where they start and they seem to stay throughout this particular lifetime. So by just sticking with that one part, it obliterates the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the God picture, and the God picture is inside of us. And so if we're thinking about, okay, ghost hunters or whatever else falls into that realm of the paranormal, then we miss the main message. The paranormal is interesting as an aside. It can add something to say, okay, possibly fortifying some concept of a belief of after death. But we don't need that, because in meditation, a person's mind opens up, and quite literally in their mind's eye, the third eye, however you choose to call it, they get glimpses into the afterlife. So we have the continuation of the soul, and that would be, to me, the major thing that the paranormal could actually contribute, and we're already basically covered through the practice of meditation and mysticism.
Do societies that promote psychic research have a prominent role in the organization's understanding of metaphysics?
To a certain extent, but to use the word a prominent role, no. We certainly respect what any person that is a serious psychic researcher is doing. Anything that falls under the realm of parapsychology and is being done in a fashion where it can be respected by academia as being a serious research, yes, it has a place, definitely. But again, it doesn't make any difference of getting small parts. In other words, like parapsychology, psychic research might involve Kirlian photography, i.e. auras around objects, around the human body. That has a place to say in our study that we are an energy field from head to foot. So Kirlian photography is an example, saying that there's a radiation of energy coming from the central body energy field, can have its place. But it is not the overwhelming, all-consuming. That is the thing that I'm trying to perhaps emphasize with you, is that the main thrust is, who am I, what am I, where have I been, where am I going, and living in that eternal now that is God's presence within ourselves.
Dr. Masters, do you agree that faith is defined as belief in something that cannot be proven?
No, I don't. The mind that was in Christ Jesus basically said, the blind shall lead the blind, and both shall fall into the ditch. The blind leading the blind is, to me, blind faith. I don't believe in blind faith. I believe in investigating to the point where your faith is justified. I believe in what I call justifiable faith. That is, the experimentation that I've referred to previously with you that went on for decades, of where we explored people's unconscious and found the connection to deity, found the connection to the afterlife, etc. That to me then becomes in its own way a scientific approach to be able to prove that these things do exist as part of the unconscious, part of the psyche of mankind and womankind. Therefore, to me, the one thing I could not accept is blind faith. I have to have justifiable faith. I find that over a period of all of the years that I've spent in this, that faith is justifiable when a person begins to explore what's inside of themselves in their own unconscious mind. And therefore, to me, you can tell somebody, yes, there's a pink elephant in the next room, but that's just a belief. You can cause it to become the faith of the pink elephant, but that doesn't mean that it's real. So to me, I mean, I can understand why people, if they have nothing but what's been passed down to them traditionally from one theologian to another to say, this is my faith and I believe in it, I can't accept that. What I've tried to do really is to take more of a scientific outlook in this, but by the sense of exploring the unconscious to justify faith, to say, yes, if somebody has claimed in a higher state of mystical union with God that they have experienced the ultimate oneness of life, and that is a repeating type of situation as people describe their experience, then to me, the faith in God is not just something that is another person's opinion. And it doesn't make any difference how high up the mucky might be in any type of religion. To me, then they are taking it on blind faith. And I really believe that religion and spirituality can only move forward when people that are in the leadership positions of any type of faith tradition can say, we have to prove this out. And the only way to prove it out is to go where people that established our religion, i.e. the mystics that had these experiences, this is our pathway to truth.
Dr. Masters, is religious intolerance a present-day concern for the organization and its teachings?
Religious intolerance has always been there. One religion is basically intolerant of another religion. Certainly it's always a concern. To me, God created every religion for a purpose according to the understanding and spiritual awakening or lack thereof of its adherents. So you can have one religion claiming they're the only way to God and truth and so on and so forth. I really believe that those that espouse that in the name of Jesus would really step backward if Jesus were to reappear and just simply say, look, you know, God has created every particular approach to God and allows it. If there is a supreme being, and the supreme being was in disagreement of having all of these different concepts and different theologies, that power would have eliminated it from the soul, the psyche of every human being, and centered in on only one religion. So yes, we have intolerance, but then every religion that exists, if they're looked at by an opposing religion with opposing views, their adherents would feel intolerance. So it's an ongoing thing of who's right, who's wrong. In the final analysis, there's a little bit of truth here, a little bit of falsehood here, up, down, and it's up to the understanding and awakening of every individual to make their choice. So we respect the traditions of other religions. Obviously, we don't agree with them because we take more of the mystical, the total overall view, while theirs is scoped in on a more narrow view of ours is the only way. All these other religions would not exist if God did not want them to exist, because people worship God in different ways according to their understanding and their background.
Dr. Masters, are there parts of the world that are more open to the teachings in metaphysics than other locations?
Certainly there are. Because you have certain areas of the world that are influenced by their culture and by their own spiritual traditions. In other words, if you go into South America, you'll find that there's a heavy Catholic influence, and hence they're not maybe as open. Yet strangely enough, when you come into this country, into the United States, I found over a period of time when I was really teaching and doing seminars practically on a daily basis, I would periodically take a survey and say, how many of you are from such a religious background and faith? Probably 80% of those in attendance were either former Catholics or currently practicing Catholics that were not getting enough knowledge from Catholicism. Switch it down into South America, where they are then heavily indoctrinated, and then the choices of metaphysics becomes more into what we call the lower phases. The people are still interested in Catholicism, but they're more now interested in the psychic aspects of it. And so that's not the area that, that we're concerned with. So it varies from country to country. As an example, with your own heritage, as I understand, is Greek, were probably 20 years ago 300 registered metaphysical organizations in Greece. So in Greece, with that type of history, of philosophy and so forth, you would find that particular opening. In England, we seem to have a lot of people because they became very interested in spiritualism and mediumship and so forth many decades ago. So there is definitely pockets where there is a greater interest in metaphysics, and other pockets which are still under the influence of some type of national, practically, religion, that the people aren't even given the opportunity to study these things.
Dr. Masters, do you agree that we must continue to explore and make inquiries in all areas of knowledge?
Absolutely. Because as I said a little earlier in our interview, that to me eventually what we call science today and what we call mysticism today will eventually at the top of the mountain of truth converge and be as one. So therefore every discipline that exists today should be pursued. And even if they're in disagreement today, the forecast will be that they will be eventually at the top of the mountain of ultimate truth in agreement, and both will complement each other.
As a follow-up to that question, are you predicting that there's a certain time period that this will happen?
There's no time period because we deal in eternity. How can we define what will be and not be if we live in the eternity? It could be that it's already happened, perhaps in somewhere in the history of the universe, that this convergence has taken place. So when we're dealing with eternal time, where there is no time except for maybe what you would define as one eternal moment, it's all basically the same then.
Dr. Masters, will your teachings in metaphysics lead the way for bettering someone's life in terms of mind, body, and spirit?
Okay, you're asking for the mind, body, and the spirit.
Yes.
I can be self-promoting here and say, oh yes, they will. Anybody can make claims. Anybody can say, yes, if you study what I have taught and so forth, yes, your body and your mind and your spirit is going to be better. Again, we can't go on belief. The only thing I can go by is this. In our files, there are thousands of testimonials, unsolicited testimonials, of how health has been positively affected, how the mental state and emotional state of people have been positively affected, and most assuredly, the central theme of spiritual awakening and awareness has definitely been established. So when you ask me that question, you're asking me a question that has been answered now in over a half a century of people writing, phoning, in the present day, emailing, and being very, very thankful that they discovered what we have been teaching, which again was based upon all of this research of a person's inner psyche, their mind, and their soul. So we take a total holistic approach, i.e. body, mind, and soul, and without trying to specify any one particular area, it would seem that what we have been teaching all of this time has affected a great many people worldwide. You see, you can have a theory and it sounds good on paper, but until it's been proven over a period of time to really help people, because there's so many self-help things coming out now, my gosh, the bookstores are loaded with self-help books. Everybody's got their idea. And it's like there was an old comedian, Jimmy Durante, years ago, and he used to have a line at the end of his shows, everybody wants to get into the act. Well, self-help and motivation and so forth, all of these are very, very popular right now. So anybody can come up and hang up a shingle and say, boy, I'm going to show people how to do things to improve their life. The proof is in the pudding. We've already got the pudding. It's been tasted, it's been tried, it's digested well as far as the nourishment of the mind, body, and soul.
Dr. Masters, we've covered an extensive amount of questions and answers and material, touched upon many serious subjects of the teachings of the church, the organization, your personal efforts over decades and in the subject of metaphysics. Is there any comment or remark that you want to make to conclude the interview?
Because you emphasize so much the teachings and so forth, how our teachings compared with other teachings and so on and so forth, and I've sort of told you and mentioned to you about the religions and how each religion is created by God and allowed to function under God's grace. The one thing's to put an end to all of this bickering amongst religions and so forth, which to me should not exist. We should exist as a brotherhood of all religions. I quote something out of Hinduism to maybe conclude this interview. It goes, no matter what path a man may travel, no matter where he walks, it leads to me. Whatever path, spiritually or non-spiritually, even those that are atheists, agnostics, non-believers, wherever they may be walking, whatever path they may be following, eventually all of those paths converge into ultimate truth. And ultimate truth is we live in a conscious universe, and the consciousness that we are permitted in our own bodies and minds is a part of that. That would be my concluding.
Dr. Masters, thank you very much. This has been a most enlightening interview, and it's believed that many will learn and gain and better themselves by listening and viewing to it.
Thank you very much, Dean.